The ancient meeting hall of the Galactic Union buzzed with whispers. Representatives from 100 star systems gathered in the vast chamber, its walls adorned with star charts marking thousands of inhabited worlds. In one corner of the main display, Earth glowed blue, surrounded by warning symbols. Ambassador Tejo's fingers traced the notation beside Earth's coordinates. His scaled skin reflected the soft light as he read aloud. Approach with extreme caution. Non-intervention protocol strictly enforced. The Doran diplomat frowned. His species had conquered 17 systems in the past century alone. The idea that any world was off-limits seemed ridiculous to him. Why this special treatment for such a young species? He asked, turning to face the Hyunwoo delegate beside him. Hyunwoo was old, even by the standards of his long-lived race. His skin had faded to pale gray, and his 4 eyes had clouded with age. At Taho's question, the ancient being trembled slightly. There are things in this universe best left undisturbed, Hyunwoo whispered. He would say nothing more, no matter how Taho pressed. The Doran Empire's War Council met 3 days later. Commander Juwon, decorated military leader and cousin to the Emperor himself, stood before the gathered generals. His uniform bore medals from dozens of successful campaigns. Earth achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago, Juwon said, pointing to the holographic display. They have barely begun to explore their own solar system. By our standards, they are children playing with toys they don't understand. General Minho leaned forward. Then why does the Galactic Union treat them with such caution? What threat could they pose? That's exactly what I intend to find out, Juwon replied with a smile that revealed his sharp teeth. I've already dispatched observation ships to their system. They operate beyond human detection capabilities. The Emperor nodded his approval. Proceed with caution, Commander. If Earth truly holds some power we don't understand, I want to know what it is and how we might claim it for ourselves. For 3 months, Doran ships watched Earth from hiding spots throughout the solar system. They recorded human communications, studied their military bases, and even sent tiny drones to observe major cities. Commander Juwon reviewed each report with growing confusion. This makes no sense, he muttered as his assistant Yuna placed another data tablet before him. Humans are physically weak compared to most spacefaring species. No natural armor, limited strength, poor senses. Their technology is advancing quickly, but still centuries behind our capabilities. Yunha nodded. Their military forces would be no match for even a small Doran fleet. They have no planetary shield system, no orbital defense grid, nothing that explains their protected status. Juwon stood and paced his office. The view screen showed Earth in real time, a swirling blue marble against the blackness of space. Something about the planet made him uneasy, though he couldn't explain why. There must be something we're missing, he said finally. Some hidden defense or alliance we haven't detected. Prepare a diplomatic team. If we can't understand what protects them through observation, perhaps we can discover it through conversation. The small Doran vessel approached Earth openly, broadcasting peaceful intentions according to standard first contact protocols. The humans responded with excitement, arranging a formal welcome at their United Nations headquarters. Sunwoo, Juwon's most experienced diplomat, led the team. Though the Dorans had studied human languages, they used translator devices to ensure clear communication. The humans seemed stunned but delighted to meet aliens who looked so different from themselves. The tall, scaled Dorans with their 4 arms and reflective eyes were nothing like the creatures of human science fiction. They welcomed us as if meeting new friends, Sunwoo reported to Juwon afterward. No fear, no suspicion. They actually seemed surprised when we mentioned other galactic powers. Did you find any evidence of advanced defenses? Any sign of what protects them? Juwon asked. Nothing obvious, Sunwoo replied. Their military leaders asked about our weapons technology, but showed nothing that could threaten us. Their planet has beautiful oceans, diverse ecosystems, and sprawling cities, but nothing that explains their protected status. Juan frowned. What about signs of other alien influence? Could another empire be secretly protecting them? That's where things get strange, Sunwoo said, lowering her voice. We found odd gaps in their historical records, unexplained technological leaps, brief mentions of incidents that were quickly classified. And most disturbing, there were occasional references in their oldest texts to beings that don't match any human description. The team's xenobiologist, Shuno, added, they aren't alone on that planet. Something else shares their world, something that doesn't appear in any of our scans. Juwan's scales flattened against his skin, a sign of deep thought among his people. After a long silence, he made his decision. Prepare 3 stealth ships. We'll capture human specimens for study. Perhaps their biology holds the answer. Target isolated locations, a remote research station, a small ship at sea, and a rural community. Bring back 5 subjects from each site. The order went out. 3 of the best ships in the Doran fleet disappeared into hyperspace, bound for Earth. 5 days later, Juwan stood in the communications center, staring at the empty screens. None of the ships had returned. No status updates had been received after their arrival at Earth. The only message was a broken transmission from the lead vessel, the words distorted by static. They weren't myths. The humans don't even know what protects them. The shadows. They're watching us. The message ended with sounds that made even the hardened Doran communications officers flinch. Not screams exactly, but something worse. The sound of minds breaking. Juwan turned away from the screens, his usual confidence shaken. Whatever guarded Earth had destroyed 3 advanced military vessels without triggering any alerts on human defense systems. The humans remained oblivious, going about their lives, never knowing what had happened in the darkness above their world. Cancel all operations near Earth, he ordered quietly. I need to speak with the Hyunwoo High Council. There are older secrets here than I imagined. As he left the command center, Juwan couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed his ships home. Something that even now watched from just beyond the edge of perception, waiting. The Doran diplomatic vessel approached the orbital station that served as home base for their Earth observation mission. Inside his private chamber, Commander Juwan stared at the blue planet through the viewport, his reflection ghosting over the shimmering world. Something about Earth tugged at ancient instincts he couldn't name. Commander, said his aide, Minju, from the doorway. The diplomatic team has returned. They request immediate audience. Juwan nodded. Bring them to the command center. 20 minutes later, Sunwoo stood before the gathered officers. The diplomat looked tired. Her normally bright scales dulled from stress. Humans welcomed us as if we were long-lost friends, she reported. They arranged celebrations, shared meals, and introduced us to their leaders. Not once did they show fear of us or our intentions. They truly don't understand their place in the galaxy, muttered one of the officers. Or they know something we don't, countered Juwan. What did you learn about their defenses? Sunwoo shook her head. That's what's so strange. They have no advanced planetary shields, no super weapons hidden in their mountains or oceans. Their military technology is primitive compared to ours. The xenobiologist, Shuno, stepped forward. A data tablet trembled slightly in his lower hands, while his upper arms gestured at the display screen. We gained access to their information networks, he said. Humans document everything. Their history, science, military actions. It's all preserved in their libraries and digital systems. Images flashed on the screen. Human cities throughout history, armies, weapons, scientific achievements. But there are gaps, Juno continued. Places where information simply stops or contradicts itself. He pointed to timeline discrepancies. Here, in the period they call the 1940s, human weapons technology advanced dramatically in just months. Here, computing systems made inexplicable leaps forward. Juwan leaned closer. Natural innovation can happen quickly. Not like this, Juno insisted. And there's more. We found classified records of incidents that governments worked together to hide from their own people. Reports of strange phenomena that were documented and then buried. The images on screen changed to show ancient human artifacts, cave paintings, stone tablets, medieval manuscripts. Each contained drawings of beings that resembled no known Earth creature, shadowy figures with too many limbs, entities composed of geometric shapes that hurt the eye to view, beings of light that seemed to phase through solid matter. These appear throughout human history, Junho said quietly. Different cultures, different times, same entities. Humans write them off as myths or mistakes. But we found modern records too. Military reports describing encounters with unknown biological entities during deep-sea operations or in remote mountain ranges. Silence fell over the command center. They aren't alone on that planet, Junho concluded. And whatever shares their world doesn't appear in any of our scans. Jiwan paced the room, claws clicking against the floor. Could these be other aliens? Perhaps humans are being protected by some advanced species. I don't think so, said Sunwoo. Whatever these things are, they've been on Earth since before humans evolved. They're part of that world in a way I can't explain. We need specimens, Juan decided. Both human and, if possible, these other entities. Prepare 3 stealth ships with capture teams. Target isolated locations to minimize detection. The room grew tense. Captain Doyun, commander of the stealth fleet, spoke up. Sir, if there is something protecting humans, then we'll discover what it is and how to counter it, Juan said firmly. The Emperor expects results. 3 days later, the stealth ships departed. The first headed toward a remote research station in Antarctica, the second to a small island in the Pacific occupied by only 50 humans, and the third to a forest reserve in northern Europe. Each carried specialized containment chambers and the best capture technology in the Doran arsenal. The mission was projected to take 72 hours. After 96 hours with no communication, Juan authorized an emergency protocol to activate the vessel's distress beacons. Only one responded. The signal was weak, coming from the Antarctic ship, but it was enough to establish a flickering communication link. The command center fell silent as the screen activated. Instead of the neat professional interior of a Doran vessel, they saw darkness broken by emergency lighting. Warning alarms blared in the background. The camera view shook as if held by an unsteady hand. This is Captain Minji, came a voice, though the figure on screen was hidden in shadow. Mission compromised. Report, Captain, Juan ordered. What happened? The camera panned across what had once been the ship's bridge. Equipment lay scattered and broken. Dark stains marked the walls and floor. We found the research station. Minji's voice continued, unnaturally calm despite the chaos around her. Humans were drilling into the ice. They broke through into something old. We were observing when it happened. When what happened? Juan demanded. When they woke it up. The camera steadied, finally showing Minji's face. Her scales had turned white, not the normal pale color of her species, but stark, bloodless white. One eye was missing, the socket dark and empty. They weren't myths, she whispered. The things in human stories. They're real. The humans don't even know what protects them. The image blurred as shadows moved across the bridge, shadows that seemed to flow like liquid and had too many angles to exist in normal space. The shadows. Minji's voice shook. They're watching us. The communication ended with sounds that made every Doran in the command center press their hands against their ears, a terrible chorus of broken minds encountering something they were never meant to comprehend. When the noise finally stopped, no one spoke. Juan stared at the blank screen, his usual confidence shattered. Lock down all information about Earth, he finally ordered. No ships approach without my direct authorization, and get me a secure channel to the Hyunwoo High Council. Sir, questioned Minju. The Emperor will expect. The Emperor will understand once I explain. Juan interrupted. He turned back to the viewport, looking at distant Earth with new fear. We need information that only the oldest species in the galaxy might possess, before we lost 3 more ships. As the command center emptied, Juan remained alone, watching Earth rotate peacefully in space. For a moment, just a moment, he thought he saw darkness gather on the planet's night side, forming a pattern like an enormous eye looking back at him. Then it was gone, leaving him wondering if his mind had begun to play tricks on him, or if something was watching. The great silver spires of the Hyunwoo homeworld rose like frozen fountains against the pale pink sky. Commander Juan had never visited this ancient world before. Few Dorans ever received permission to set foot on it. The Hyunwoo were the oldest known species in the galaxy, having achieved space travel when most other races were still discovering fire. Juwan's shuttle landed on a platform floating among the clouds. An escort of tall, gray-skinned Hyunwoo met him, their 4 eyes blinking in sequence as they bowed. "The Council has agreed to hear you," said the lead escort. "This is unusual. Be grateful." Juwan nodded, keeping his 4 arms close to his body in the gesture of respect his advisors had taught him. "I thank the Council for their wisdom." They led him through hallways that seemed to bend in impossible ways. The architecture of the Hyunwoo defied normal rules of space, creating the unsettling feeling that he was walking much farther than the physical distance should allow. The council chamber was a vast dome, with 7 ancient Hyunwoo seated in a semicircle. Their skin had faded to almost white with age, and their robes bore symbols so old that even Juwan's translator couldn't decipher them. Commander of the Doran fleet, spoke the central figure. "You come seeking knowledge of Earth." It wasn't a question. Juwan stepped forward. 3 of our ships have been lost," he said simply. "My people need answers." The council members exchanged glances. One spoke in a whisper. "The warning existed for a reason." "And yet they ignored it," said another. The central figure raised a hand for silence. "Show him." A small Hyunwoo in dark robes approached Juwan. "I am Sungho, chief archivist. Follow me." They descended deep below the council chambers, into caverns that seemed carved from the living rock of the planet itself. The walls glowed with a soft blue light that came from nowhere and everywhere. "Few non-Hyunwoo have ever entered our archives," Sungho said as they walked. "What you seek is in our oldest section." They stopped before a sealed door marked with warning symbols. Sungho pressed his palm against it, and the door melted away. Inside was a circular room filled with crystalline structures that hummed faintly. Sungho touched one, and it projected images into the air around them. "These records date back 40,000 years, he explained, "before your species had even evolved intelligence." The images showed Earth as it was in ancient times, oceans covering different patterns of land, ice caps larger than today, primitive forests spreading across continents. Then the view zoomed in, showing strange structures that seemed to shimmer between states of existence. "Earth has been visited many times throughout its history," Sungho said quietly. "Long before humans achieved civilization, the planet itself is the ancient home of entities that predated even our earliest records, beings that exist partially in dimensions beyond our understanding." The images shifted, showing shadowy forms that made Juwan's scales tighten against his body. The shapes moved in ways that hurt his eyes to follow, bending reality around them. "What are they?" he whispered. "We don't know their true nature," Sungho admitted. "They were already ancient when the first Hyunwoo achieved spaceflight. They are not evil, as your species might understand the concept. They simply are. Their existence follows different rules than ours." The display changed again, showing what appeared to be early spacecraft of varied designs approaching Earth. These entities had largely retreated from direct interaction with our universe, sleeping in Earth's deep places. Sungho continued. "When early spacefaring civilizations discovered Earth and its primitive human inhabitants, they saw an easy conquest. The images became disturbing. Ships torn apart, alien bodies contorted in agony, entire fleets vanishing in swirls of darkness. None survived the attempt, Sungo said simply. Juan felt cold despite the comfortable temperature of the archive. Just like my ships. Sungho nodded. The pattern repeated for thousands of years. Eventually, the galactic powers realized they needed to negotiate. The crystal hummed louder, projecting images of a massive fleet approaching Earth. But unlike the previous ships, these came together. Vessels of many designs and origins, flying in formation. 15,000 years ago, a delegation representing all major galactic powers traveled to Earth. Sungo explained. The records of what transpired aren't complete. Those who returned were changed. Many could not speak of what they had witnessed. Others went mad. But the outcome was clear. The display showed a document with signatures and symbols from dozens of species. Earth and its humans would remain untouched, allowed to develop naturally, Sungo said. In exchange, the entities would remain dormant, interfering only if Earth faced external threat. This is why the warning exists in the Galactic Union records. This is why no empire, no matter how powerful, attempts to claim Earth. Juan stared at the ancient agreement. But why are humans allowed to live there? Why weren't they destroyed like the aliens who tried to invade? Sungho touched another crystal, and it showed primitive humans living in caves. As they slept, shadowy forms moved among them, touching their foreheads. The humans evolved alongside these beings, the archivist explained. They've been shaped by proximity to them. They're myths of gods, monsters, and things that lurk in darkness. Not imagination, memory. He displayed human artwork throughout history, cave paintings showing strange figures, ancient statues of many-limbed gods, medieval depictions of angels and demons, modern horror movies. All contained echoes of the entities Juan had seen in the records. Humans carry fragments of awareness in their subconscious, Sungo continued. The entities have touched their dreams for millennia. This has changed them in ways even they don't understand. They can perceive reality differently than other species. They can withstand concepts that would break other minds. Why would these entities protect humans? Juan asked. Sungho's 4 eyes blinked slowly. We believe it's something like symbiosis. Humans provide something the entities need, perhaps a connection to our physical reality, as the entities themselves withdraw further into other dimensions. In return, the entities ensure humans remain safe to develop on their own path. The archivist closed down the display. Now you understand why Earth is forbidden territory. The Galactic Union doesn't fear humans. We fear disturbing what sleeps alongside them. Juan stood in silence, absorbing what he had learned. Finally, he asked, will they come for us? For what we did? They rarely leave Earth, Sungo replied. But I would recommend your empire formally reaffirms its recognition of Earth's protected status. Immediately. As they left the archive, Juan couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him from the records. A presence just beyond sight, watching with ancient patience. There is one more thing you should know, Sungo said as they reached the surface. Humans will eventually develop to the point where they join the wider galactic community. When that day comes, remember what you learned here. They may seem ordinary, but they have grown up in the shadow of beings older than stars. That has made them different. Juan looked up at the pink sky, suddenly grateful for its familiar patterns and predictable physics. I understand, he said quietly. Earth will remain untouched by the Doran Empire. I give my word. The Doran medical chamber hummed as it completed the final adjustments to Commander Juan's body. He looked at his reflection in the polished surface of the medical pod. The face that stared back was no longer his own. Gone were the scaled skin, the reflective eyes, and the 4 arms that marked him as Doran. Instead, a human male with light brown skin and dark hair gazed back at him. The transformation is complete, Commander, said Dr. Mina, checking the readings. Your DNA will register as human on any scan. The neural implants will translate Earth languages instantly. Your body will process their food, and withstand their environment. Juan flexed his new hands, only two now with 5 fingers each. The sensation felt wrong, alien. How long will it last? 6 Earth months before cellular degradation begins, Minna replied. More than enough time for your mission. Despite the warnings from the Hyunwoo Council, despite the lost ships and disturbing ancient records, Juan couldn't accept that mere legends could protect an entire planet. He needed to see for himself. The cover identity is prepared, his aide Hanyul said, handing him a folder containing human documents. You are Dr. James Kim, a climate scientist joining the international research team at Outpost 7 in Antarctica. Your credentials have been inserted into their databases. 2 weeks later, Juan stepped off a transport plane onto the frozen continent of Antarctica. Wind whipped snow around him as he pulled his heavy coat tighter. A woman with a bright orange parka waved to him. Dr. Kim, welcome to the edge of the world, she shouted over the wind. I'm Dr. Elena Petrov, station director. Let's get you inside before you freeze. Outpost 7 was a cluster of connected buildings half buried in the ice. Inside, 23 humans from various countries worked together studying climate change, glacial movement, and atmospheric conditions. Juan found them remarkably adaptable for such fragile creatures. His quarters were small but comfortable. At night, he documented his observations using a device disguised as a human tablet computer, but which actually transmitted encrypted data to a Doran probe hiding in orbit. Day 15, he recorded. Humans continue to show no awareness of any external protection. Their conversations focus entirely on their work, their homes, and trivial social matters. They speak of alien life as a theoretical possibility, not a known reality. If cosmic horrors truly guard this planet, these humans know nothing of them. For weeks, he observed nothing unusual. He worked alongside the humans, ate their food, listened to their music, and even joined their movie nights. Slowly, he began to wonder if the Hyunwoo records were exaggerated, myths built on ancient misunderstandings. Then came the accident. A research team led by Dr. Petrov had been drilling ice cores from the glacier beneath the station. Their specialized equipment could extract samples from 3 kilometers deep. We're getting strange readings from the new bore site, Dr. Petrov announced during the morning briefing. Something's interfering with our sensors at about 2.8 kilometers down. We need to check the equipment. Juan volunteered for the team, curious about the anomaly. They trudged across the ice field to the drilling platform, a metal structure standing stark against the white landscape. The drill reached target depth yesterday, explained Dr. Nguyen, the lead engineer. But then the sensors went crazy. Look at these readings. The monitor showed oscillating patterns unlike anything Juan had seen in Earth technology. Something about the fluctuations seemed familiar, though. They resembled energy signatures he'd observed in some of the oldest Doran artifacts, objects that predated recorded history. Let's run a camera down to check for equipment damage, Dr. Petrov decided. They lowered a probe into the narrow bore hole. At first, the imagery showed only the expected layers of ancient ice, compressed over millions of years. At 2.7 kilometers, the ice changed color, becoming darker. At 2.8 kilometers, the camera showed something that wasn't ice at all. What is that? Dr. Nguyen whispered. The screen displayed what looked like a surface of dark material, with faint, swirling patterns that seemed to move despite being frozen. The patterns formed shapes that made Juwan's human eyes water when he tried to focus on them. Is it rock? Asked another scientist. Maybe volcanic material. No, Dr. Petrov said, leaning closer. I've never seen anything like this. As they watched, the surface on the screen began to shift. The dark material rippled like water, the patterns accelerating their movement. Pull the camera back, Juwan shouted, suddenly remembering the broken transmission from his lost ship. Too late. The surface on the screen bulged upward, reaching for the camera. The feed went dead. The lights in the drilling platform flickered. Equipment sparked. The temperature dropped so rapidly that their breath crystallized in the air. "We need to get back to the main station," Dr. Petrov ordered. "Now." They ran through the intensifying storm. Halfway to the station, all lights went out, both in the buildings ahead and in their handheld equipment. Complete darkness fell, unnatural in the Antarctic summer when the sun normally never set. Juan felt it before he saw anything, a presence so vast it seemed to press against his mind. The humans around him stopped running, frozen in place. Then he saw them. They moved like liquid shadow across the ice, these guardians that had no proper form in three-dimensional space. They flowed and shifted, sometimes appearing as tall, elongated figures, sometimes as geometric patterns too complex to comprehend, sometimes as nothing more than darker patches of darkness. The humans stood motionless, their eyes wide with primal fear. Juan wanted to run, but found he couldn't move. He recognized the entities from the Hyunwoo archives, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of their presence. The shadows surrounded the research team. They didn't attack. They didn't need to. Their mere existence invoked terror beyond rational thought. Juan felt his human disguise might tear apart from the strain of containing his fear. One shadow moved closer to Dr. Petrov. It extended what might have been a limb, or perhaps just a concentrated portion of its darkness, and touched her forehead. Then, to Juan's shock, a voice spoke directly into his mind, not through his ears, but somehow planted directly in his thoughts. "Sleep now. Forget. We maintain the bargain." The humans collapsed like puppets with cut strings, falling unconscious onto the ice. Juan felt his own consciousness fading at the edges, but his Doran mind, protected by neural implants and hidden behind the human disguise, remained partially aware. Through narrowed eyes, he watched the shadows flow back toward the drilling site. The ice seemed to mend itself in their wake, sealing the hole that had pierced their ancient rest. When he woke hours later, the humans were stirring around him, confused but unarmed. The storm had passed. The station lights had returned to normal. "What happened?" Dr. Nguyen asked, rubbing his head. "Equipment failure at the drilling site," Dr. Petrov said with certainty, though her expression showed momentary confusion. "The power surge must have knocked us out." Juan watched in amazement as the humans accepted this explanation without question. Later inspection showed the drilling equipment had been destroyed by what everyone agreed must have been an electrical fire. The borehole itself was gone, the ice undisturbed as if they had never drilled at all. No one mentioned shadows or moving darkness or voices in their minds. But Juan remembered, and he understood at last. Commander Juan returned to Doran space with a secret that would change everything. His report was unlike any other mission summary in Imperial history. He had discovered something about Earth that made it clear. This planet was not to be touched. In his carefully written document, Juan explained that humans were not the real guardians of their world. Something else lived alongside them, something ancient and powerful beyond imagination. These mysterious entities were deeply connected to Earth in a way no other species could understand. What made humans special was not their technology or strength, but their ability to exist next to cosmic horrors without going mad. They lived their entire lives completely unaware of the incredible beings surrounding them. These guardians were so powerful that no galactic empire would dare challenge them. Juwan's report was immediately classified at the highest level. The Imperial High Command marked Earth as permanently forbidden, a place no Doran spacecraft would ever approach again. When his fellow officers asked about his mission, he would only give cryptic answers that hinted at something deeply mysterious. "The humans believe they are alone," he would say quietly. "Their isolation is a kindness. They must never know how close they are to something beyond their understanding." The report suggested that when humans eventually explore the galaxy, they would bring with them protectors that defied all known laws of physics. These guardians did not protect Earth like a territory, but because the planet was literally part of them. And they were part of it. Juan understood that Earth was protected not by weapons or technology, but by ancient promises and entities so complex that traditional military might meant nothing to them. The stars would always remain safe for humans, not because of human strength, but because of what washed over them. The mission had changed Juan forever. He knew a truth that would remain hidden, a secret that protected not just humans, but potentially the entire universe from forces beyond comprehension. Earth would remain untouched, its mysteries guarded by something far older and more powerful than any spacefaring civilization could imagine.